Stephen gave an introduction which talked about, focused more on what are the problems that you're trying to solve with regards to the education system and your role as educators. And I want to focus more on why. Why is it important and what are the benefits of doing that and getting that right? If I can figure out which button, yeah. So I apologise if I offend anybody with this diagram. I looked everywhere for a representation of the education supply chain and couldn't find one, so I invented one myself, and having spent my career in manufacturing, I see everything as supply chains, and certainly from a big picture perspective, it helps me pull it all together and make sure that if I'm focusing on one end, I understand that those ends are all interlinked. So if I've got arrows in the wrong place or boxes missing or whatever, feel free after the presentation or at morning tea to come up and guide me on how I can evolve this into something that is more informative. But I wanted to use this to explain a couple of things, is that this whole system is very complex, it's getting more complex, and the need to get it right and to get it more integrated is even more important today as we are evolving in the economy and transitioning into more of a knowledge-based economy. So my presentation is going to focus more around that orange circle area and what's driving the change in the education system, and if we get it right, what are the benefits for the students coming out, for the educators, for the institutions themselves, but also very much for the economy and for the marketplace, so that we can create a positive cycle as it comes to creating more jobs and having a more prosperous economy that can then feed a more informed education system. So this chart I use regularly, and for me it visualises some significant changes that have occurred over the last 10 years. These changes are happening, they're real. This is ABS data, and it's showing how the workforce and the jobs out there have markedly changed, with the example being in the healthcare area, over 460,000 jobs have been created, but in agriculture and manufacturing, there's been around 150,000 jobs reduced. Now, the other important aspect of this is that there's been salary changes across those areas as well, and there's been lots of growth in other areas. With some of the areas that have been reduced, some of those roles that have gone away have been more automated roles or lower level roles, and certainly in manufacturing there's still lots of opportunity for high skilled jobs in that sector, in areas such as advanced manufacturing. In agriculture there's still lots of opportunities as it relates to getting biosciences right and how do we improve food security and all of those aspects that relate to agriculture. So they're not going to go away or disappear fully, but they are reducing in the number of roles. And in the area of healthcare, there's a lot more jobs around personalised medicine that will start to come through in that system, and that whole nature of providing healthcare will continue to change in the future. Underpinning that also are skills like ICT and design that start to play through as well, where those areas of skills and expertise are increasing in importance in Australia because that's something that we can be competitive and differentiated at. The other graph I use is to show the probability of areas of the workforce that they will become computerised. So what it's saying is that managers, professional type roles have less probability of being computerised because at this point in time there aren't computers that can make that type of decision making that managers and professionals make. Not to say with artificial intelligence that won't happen in the future, but very much today those jobs are increasing in number. Whereas when you look down the other end, there's a very high probability that jobs in the area of labouring, machine operating, sales workers, etc., and we're seeing examples of that already in areas that sectors that are being disrupted or where jobs are being outsourced to other countries. A big example of that is the banking sector. So there is a shift in the types of roles that are likely to continue and grow, and the roles that over time, and this is quite a controversial graph because every article I read to show that computerization, automation, robotics are going to reduce jobs, you get another report saying, oh, but it's going to not reduce them, it's going to change them and change the nature of those roles. And if we get it right, then it will also help businesses be more profitable, which means that as they grow, they're putting on more people. It may not be in that exact same area, but they're able to grow and expand. A week or so ago, the Victorian government held a manufacturing showcase, and it was oversubscribed, as it has been for the last 2 years, with over 600 representatives from companies there. And they always showcase some successful new companies that are coming through and starting to build their business overseas. And one of those examples was a company called GP Graders, and it's a company that provide technology and design equipment to grade cherries. Through their ability to upscale their technology using visual technology capabilities, now they're exporting that design capability and that manufacturing capability to countries like Germany and Poland, as an example, which is quite a significant feat for an Australian company based out of Victoria. But the CEO of that company said his position was that any job that involves differentiating product through visualization can be automated. And someone asked the very valid question, but isn't that going to reduce jobs? And his point was, if we can build that expertise, and as what they've been doing is they create scale by being able to develop that technology and build a global market for it, and that's creating jobs and bringing very valuable revenue back into the country that can help be part of that positive cycle. So there is a trade-off in some of these areas as we progress the technology and use these higher skills. It does reduce jobs in the short term, but it has the potential to create revenue and then, as I said, keep that system healthier. This is another chart that I use because in the 30 years that I've been in the technology sector, I've never experienced a point in time where there's been such strong alignment in the priority areas of focus at a state level, at a federal level, and at a global level. And so the state's priorities are saying these are the areas that we believe there will be the highest growth for Victoria in the future. The federal government is saying these are the areas we believe will be the highest opportunities in Australia nationally, and then the last one are the societal challenges that keep coming up on a global basis. So if you're teaching or if you're working with students who want to know, what's the probability of getting a job in a particular sector, if it's aligning in some way with these priorities, I would say they've got a better chance of getting a job in the future than if it's not, given that these aren't going to change anytime soon. They may change out to the future, and other areas will always continue to be worked on, but from a state, national and global level, these are what is driving our economy today, and this is the bet that they're placing will continue to drive our economy in the future. Some other significant trends that are starting to take shape, which will impact the education system, is this whole digital futures. The Victorian government is currently putting together a digital futures strategy for the state, and that's looking at how technology and digitisation is impacting pretty well all the jobs out there, and ICT crosses over pretty well every sector, but it's creating new opportunities, new jobs such as gaming, such as cybersecurity, such as data scientists, such as bioinformaticians across the life sciences area. So this is creating a whole generation of new types of jobs out there. A lot of them aren't here today. The cybersecurity, I don't know if anybody watched Lateline the other night, but it scared the hell out of me listening to the US talk about the use of cyber technology as in place of physical bombs and things like that, where they can target utilities, government organisations, banking systems, transport systems with what they refer to as cyber bombs. And so they can shut down these systems that make these countries operate rather than kill people. But nonetheless, it's still quite devastating for anybody involved. And if that starts happening in Australia or the US, and you don't have the skills to counter it, if you don't have that capability to know what to do, how to address it, then that's a concern. And I raised the example that cybersecurity has been known as an issue for over 10 years in the banking sector and other sectors, but I'm not aware of any university course or vet course that is specialising in putting out graduates that are cybersecurity or have that ICT specialty that relates to cybersecurity. Now, I'm sure it's going to happen, and I'm sure it's being addressed now, but this is a 10-year lag that we have through the education system where these are real jobs, these are real areas of priority, and it's just one example of where the education system needs to be connected to industry to say, well, what are some of the skills that are very different from today that we are going to need in the future? The global collaborative entrepreneurship, I mean, you'll see it everywhere. It's very a popular theme at the moment, and it's not that it's not important. It is very important that we have more students coming through the system, and I've been to a number of functions recently where they've asked the audience how many people in the audience, particularly if they're students, think about setting up their own business when they leave university. And the number is either 0 or very, very few, whereas in other countries it's much more prevalent that students coming out of university, particularly if there's areas where there's difficulty in the job markets, at least have that thought or concept of starting up their own business. And that's something that both the state and the federal government are looking at. How do we get more of that mindset into our young generation coming through so that they see that at least as an option and that we give them the skills and support to help them materialise that option. So that's another significant change that's impacting the education system with regards to trying to get more business skills into university graduates. Global collaborative marketplace, every company I talk to now doesn't see them as part of a domestic market. They see them as part of a global marketplace. To do that, you need relationship management skills, you need collaboration skills, and you need to be able to negotiate to ensure that you're getting the best deal out of that partnership moving forward. Health reimagined, I talked about that a little bit. The focus on personalised medicine, how that's going to change the nursing and the medical sector, because there'll be more nursing in the home or more treatment within the home environment rather than in hospitals. Climate change will have a number of impacts moving forward. The drive to look at alternative and new energy systems will create jobs. The focus, as I said, on agriculture and the shifting crop rotations and food security, all of those areas will create jobs, and someone raised the issue recently about the impact of climate change on disease, and that when you're changing climate, you're also some particular disease types may become more prevalent because of that different climate. Increased focus on returns from research investment. In Australia, we invest something like $9.7 billion on R&D investment. That's dropped for the first time in 10 years. Last year it was flat. The prior 10 years to that, through the whole GFC, it grew. But yet, it's up there with regards to the amount of money spent on R&D based on other countries, but we're much lower on the returns that we get for that investment in R&D. So we're not seen to be good at commercialising technology and delivering value from the money we spend in R&D, and that's a huge opportunity for us to get better bang for our buck. And if that money is declining or flattening out, then we have to learn how to get better value from that to create that positive cycle. Another fact that keeps coming up is that students coming through will potentially have anywhere from 5 to 10 careers in their lifetime. I've basically had 1 or 2 in my working experience, but that's not the nature of the workforce in the future. And again, that's another one of the drivers for why graduates coming out need to be more rounded, a bit more flexible, because they may not be able to work in the area that they wanted to when they made their first decision about how, where their education was going to take them, because those jobs may not exist by the time they get out of university. And again, that reinforces the importance of soft skills to employers. So these are the statistics some of the statistics that Stephen put up, and I won't go through them. These trends are totally opposing all of the trends that I just communicated. So these trends of us having a lower participation in mathematics, dropping off in our science, having less girls, wanting to participate in science, all of these trends are negative, are going in the opposite direction to what we need them to be going in the future. So it is critically important that we are able to break that cycle and turn it round and create more STEM-oriented, STEM-focused students with those critical thinkings, with the creative problem-solving skills, and that have the flexibility to be able to take some of these jobs that are coming through in the future. And as I said, it is happening. The changes that have occurred are pretty well irreversible. We have the opportunity to embrace it and look at it as an opportunity, which our new Prime Minister very much is doing and trying to position it, or we can sort of sit back and complain about everything that's happening to us, which is not the most ideal position. So I go back to the education supply chain. And as I said, you start to see that it's not a traditional chain where you've got, kids going from primary into secondary and tertiary. There are a lot of other influences becoming more important. Industry is starting to get much more engaged in wanting to help. There's an incredible amount of goodwill from industry, large corporates, to individuals wanting to play a role, wanting to help, which in a lot of ways is creating a burden on the education system if they're all wanting to help at the same school or trying to get into the curriculum when it's already packed. So, one of my areas of focus is how do we coordinate and harness that? How do we look at where the gaps are and what is the role of industry that they can play to help the education system without creating a burden to help fill some of those gaps moving through? And the other piece is that extracurricular. How do we build the soft skills, within the education system, or encourage kids to ensure that they're building them outside of the education system in other activities, and they recognise that having an education and being great at a discipline is not going to be enough in the future. They need those other skills to supplement that, and that will help stand them apart. And just, as I said, make them more flexible and help them as they go through these multiple careers and find that as they move through that, one direction may not have suited them, but, they're flexible enough and they've got some of these transferable skills that allow them to move into other areas.
Sorry, the term soft skills, do you mean transferable skills?
Soft skills are more the relationship management, communication skills, so it's not the mathematical disciplinary skills. And so in this here, it's communication, teamwork, leadership, collaboration, strategic thinking, all of those that are not necessarily taught as part of the curriculum, but that you build up either, through the early stages, through some extracurricular activity, or certainly as you get into the workforce, you start to build up some of those skills that then take you further into your work life. So in summary, there are many different drivers impacting the future economy that will impact the education, jobs and policy direction. I mean, that's a fact. That's why there is a lot of attention on this at the moment. That's why the state and federal governments are putting a lot more emphasis in this area. There are multiple interconnected challenges along that education supply chain, and it does require an integrated solution. If you fix something at the primary level or put a lot of money and effort, but then when you get to the secondary level, you destroy that effort that you've put in, then that's not going to help anybody. Change is occurring rapidly, impacting the quality of the data and advice that students and teachers and parents are able to receive and digest about the market. And there is a greater need than ever before for teachers, for parents, for career advisors to try and tap into some of these trends, to understand that things are changing out there and where there are resources to help kids make informed decisions about what level of education they need for different career paths, or what types of jobs or roles that they could target, or what types of other skills they may need for those areas. So there's an increasing role for parents and teachers and career advisors in that space. And, as I said, a 21st century graduate's education and experience will need to be broader than just the discipline that they're getting through the university system. So thank you very much.